My boy Karlov of the Ghost Council. So he's a 2/2 for 2. Whenever you gain life, you put 2/1/1 counters on him. Then you can pay 2, remove 6/1/1 counters from him, and then exile target creature. So, how do we get those counters? By having a 2/4 flying lifelink. That's 2 counters. Every upkeep. That's 2 counters. At the beginning of my end step. That's 2 counters. That's another 2 counters. Every time I extort somebody, that's 2 counters. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under my control, 2 counters. At the beginning of each upkeep, choosing dragons. At the beginning of each upkeep. At the beginning of my upkeep, flying lifelink, and I get more counters on top of the counters for each creature I control. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, that's 2 counters. Whenever opponent's creatures enter the battlefield, that's 2 counters, and they come in tapped. Tap, gain 1 life, gain 2 counters. Cast a white spell, or planes, 2 counters. Double my mana, and then extort, 2 counters. Tap, gain 2 counters. Flying lifelink, attack, 2 more counters. At the beginning of my upkeep, 2 counters. At the beginning of my upkeep, 2 counters. Whenever I cast a black spell or swamp enters the battlefield, 2 counters. Creature hits the graveyard, 2 counters. Give my commander 1/1 and flying lifelink. That's a bit much. Create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with lifelink for every creature card in my opponent's graveyard. Each time that's one of those zombie swings, that's 2 counters. Extort, other creatures I have extort. All my creatures giving me 2 counters. Flying Death Touch lifelink. If you have black, you put in Vampire Nighthawk. Flying lifelink, 2 counters. Tap. Creatures you control you gain 1 life. Each creature I tap gives me 2 counters. Every turn, he gives me 2 counters. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, I get 2 counters. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under this person's control, 2 counters. Tap for 2 counters. Whenever land enters the battlefield on an opponent's control, 2 counters. At the beginning of my upkeep, 2 counters. Target player loses X life and I gain X, where X is the greatest power among creatures I control. It's not unreasonable for my commander to be an 80/80. Also, 2 more counters. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, 2 more counters. At the beginning of my upkeep, 2 more counters. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on this guy, and I get 2 counters from my commander. Now what can I do with those 2 counters? Here's one of my favorites. Pay 2 life, surveil 2. Do that a whole bunch of times. I can also sacrifice life to draw a card. Chanted life, sack life, draw a card. At the beginning of my upkeep, just draw another card, and I can do 1 damage to people. Whenever I gain life, I can pay X and draw that many cards. Whenever I gain life, pay 2, draw a card. As for my commander's ability, why not play it twice? Or put this on him. Whenever I gain life, I put that many counters. And some standout ways to escalate the game. 5 mana, he gets 4/4 as long as I have 25 or more life. Flying lifelink becomes an 8/8. Have 40 or more life, just straight win the game. Whenever I gain that much life, they lose that much life. When I gain, they lose. When I gain, they lose. Indestructible enchantment that could become a creature. Whenever I gain life, I put that many 1/1 counters on a target creature or enchantment I control. Guess what creature I'm choosing? Or just sack 50 life and take somebody out of the game. Or, every time I gain life, I gain twice that much life. And just in case things aren't going my way, I can destroy target creature or player, exile a non-land permanent, exile all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers. Just destroy everything I don't control. Choose a creature, get rid of everything else. Fuck with him, he fucks with you right back. And of course my girl Teysa, anything touches you, that creature gets destroyed, and then you get a spirit. Protection from creatures.